Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's daily devotional. So, our daily devotional today is going to be based on an article on the Babylon Bee. Now, we've looked at articles from that Babylon Bee before, and it's a satire website. Nothing on it is accurate in terms of the actual articles and so forth. It's a satire website, but it's generally, or at least a lot of it, is kind of Christian related in some form or fashion. And a lot of the articles are kind of designed to make people think about their spiritual life. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. But this particular article is very poignant, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. So the title of the article is, "Look at these dumb Israelites who keep going back to their idols," says man reading Bible before going off to worship his own idols. And this is from August 19th. So the individual who's being mentioned, his name is Christopher Benson in the article. It's a totally made up name. Coincidence, though, that there actually really is a Christopher Benson in the Church of Christ. He at least used to be a preacher. He's a friend of mine, and he was a preacher here in Texas. So I thought that was kind of funny. I probably will forward this to him. But anyway, according to sources close to local man Christopher Benson, the Christian read his Bible this morning and scoffed at how dumb the Israelites were for continually returning to their idols before he went off to worship his modern-day idols throughout the day. The article goes on to say, "These Israelites sure were dumb for worshiping something other than God," scoffed the man who wastes hours of his life on social media every day, obsesses over his favorite college football team, and spends way too much money on material things in an attempt to keep himself content and satisfied. "I'm like screaming at them the whole time I'm reading, 'Hey dummies, don't you remember how God just saved you from Egypt? Come on, man.' It's almost like there's some lesson in there for modern believers, but I haven't figured out what it is yet. I mean, it's just the Old Testament, so there's probably nothing applicable there." Benson pointed out that God intervened miraculously in the Israelite story time and time again. Excuse me. And yet they kept turning... Excuse me. And yet they kept turning their backs on him. Swallow down the rhyme pipe. It says, "It's like if I were them, I'd definitely worship Yahweh alone and not turn to all these other false gods," he said, shaking his head and closing his Bible before going about the rest of the day as though there were no God. So, again, this is a fake story. It's made up. There's, it's not based on any real event. However, the point of the article I thought was actually very poignant. Like I said, there have been many times in Bible study class and so forth that we've talked about the example of Israel and how that they just seem to going back. It seems odd how they kept going back to their idols. They kept going back to kept turning their backs on God when God had taken care of them, and they kept having to be reminded about the miracles that God had performed and the power that God had already shown them throughout their history. And yet they kept going back. And the irony here, obviously, it's a irony-filled article. That's what the satire really is. Here is that while there's a recognition of the mistakes that Israel made, there's a disconnect to the application of modern day Christians. And I thought this was in particular very poignant. Not that any one thing of these is in and of itself wrong. For instance, it says, "Scoffed, Israelites sure were dumb for worshiping something other than God. Scoffed the man who wastes hours of his life on social media." Is social media inherently sinful or wrong? No, it's not. But if all we do all day is spend time on social media, yeah, that could be a problem. Because it takes our attention away from serving God, takes our attention away from our responsibilities. And if all we're doing is focusing on social media every day, we're spending hours of our life on things that, quite frankly, generally speaking, I mean, unless we're having a Bible study online with somebody over social media, or we're doing a daily devotional over social media, generally speaking, there's not a lot of profit from spending that much time on social media. Now, it's one thing to catch up with friends and look at pictures of grandkids and so forth. It's another thing to spend our lives on social media. He talks about obsessing over his favorite college football team. Listen, I'm a huge South Carolina Gamecocks fan. I don't cry anymore when they lose, but I'm extremely happy when they win. But I wouldn't say I obsess over them. It's not like all I do is think about South Carolina Gamecock football or basketball or baseball or anything like that. And I think the majority of us probably have a college football team that we love to follow. Okay, that either we graduated from that college and so we kind of feel like we're a part of that, or we grew up watching a certain college football team, or you can apply this to any NFL team, NBA team, MLB team, whatever. But in the end, there are people who their entire lives are kind of shaped around some sports team. And obviously, you can't spend your life to the extent that you're neglecting your family, neglecting your responsibilities, your job, all because of a football team. And then the third thing that is brought up, he spends way too much money on material things in an attempt to keep himself content and satisfied. While there may be extreme examples of social media, and that's part of the irony here, is that there is a line. I mean, there has to be a line that you cross where you begin obsessing over social media, or you begin obsessing over a college football team. But in the end, I think this just kind of hits the nail on the head here, that it's for a purpose of keeping ourselves distracted. You know, social media, college football, or any sport really, it's a recreation. Okay, it's a recreation, it's a luxury, and it's something that people use to kind of just veg out a little bit and kind of take some time to themselves, just to kind of keep their minds off work or something, and just take a little bit of time to relax. There's nothing wrong with that. Just like, spending money on material things to a certain extent. Okay, God gives us all things richly to enjoy, 1 Timothy chapter 6. However, when I am spending way too much money, okay, at what point is it no longer just about buying something for me and my family to enjoy, to spend, some time together maybe, or whatever it may be, to the point where now I'm doing any one of these things to fill some void in my life, to feel content, as if there's some kind of emptiness in me, and I'm going to fill it with buying a whole bunch of stuff, or fill it with obsessing over other people's lives or over a football team. And I think those are very poignant points to make, especially when we don't have, it's not as common, I guess I should say, for the more general definition of idols for us to be exposed to that kind of thing. Obviously, things like Buddha, certainly false god. There are examples of other religions that obviously have false gods that are associated with them, even statues or idols as we would think of it. However, an idol can be anything that can come between us and our responsibilities and service to God. Anything physically of this life that we allow to distract us to the point that we are not serving God as we should. And of course, our service to God is an umbrella type definition. I mean, if we are not serving the way we should as a brother or sister in Christ, if we're not being the type of parent we should be, or the type of spouse we should be, because of some other thing, then that can be an idol. Okay, anything that is a distraction or takes our attention away from service to God can be an idol. And the point that is made here at the end of the the article, it's like, if I were them, I'd definitely worship Yahweh alone and not turn to all these other false gods. He said, shaking his head and closing his Bible before going about the rest of the day as though there were no God. And I just think that's kind of a poignant point to connect to idolatry, in the sense that he's going about his life in which he is basically allowing the physical world to distract him from his service to God. And that's the irony. That's the point of this article, is that by acting that way, by spending hours on social media as if that's the most important thing, or obsessing over a college football team, or spending way too much money on material things to fill this void of emptiness in their life, or make them feel content, what they're doing is they're living as though there is no God. Why? We've looked at it before, that with food and clothing, with these we shall be content. I mean, the Bible has a lot to say about contentment. Paul says in Philippians 4, I have learned in whatsoever state I am therewith to be content, whether I'm hungry or whether I'm full, whether I, all these different scenarios that Paul brings up in Philippians chapter 4. And there's a passage I wanted to bring up in Colossians chapter 3 and then verse 5, where Paul says, therefore put to death your members which are on the earth, fornication, uncleanness, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Obviously, worshiping a false god is literal idolatry. But Paul likens covetousness, which is greediness, the desire for more physical things, especially when it relates to wealth or material possessions. Paul equates that to idolatry. And what it boils down to, it goes back to, where is my attention? Where is my focus? If my focus is all based on physical things, and I'm not thinking about serving God every day, I'm not thinking about my responsibilities. That includes being a good brother or sister in Christ. It includes being a good parent or a good spouse or whatever, a good employee, a faithful employee, an honest employee. If I'm not doing those things, and whatever it is that's coming that I have involved in my life, that's idolatry. And idolatry is universally condemned in both the Old and New Testaments. And again, while there is the literal sense of worshiping a false god, can't money be a false god? Can't I allow these luxuries or these recreational activities in life to be a false god, as if those are the only things that matter? And obviously that's something that all of us as Christians have to be aware of, and the pitfall that exists because we have so many luxuries. We have so many opportunities for recreational activities. And again, there is nothing wrong with enjoying recreational activities. There is nothing wrong with that. Okay, there's nothing wrong with buying a luxury for our family or for ourselves. Okay, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But if we're doing it in an attempt to fill a void, to be content, if we're doing it to distract ourselves from our responsibilities, that becomes a problem. And so we have to be very aware of ourselves as Christians, that we don't fall into that trap. And that's what that article was all about. It was a fake article. It was, it was designed for sarcasm and silliness, but at the same time, it was designed to bring up a very poignant point that sometimes it's a trap that Christians fall into without thinking about it, without realizing it. And when they're spending all their time on things that are taking their attention away from what their responsibilities are, that's an idol. All right. That's the daily devotional for you today. I hope that's something beneficial for us to look at and to consider. So keep in mind, keep in mind, tomorrow we'll have our daily devotional at 6:30. Tomorrow's Friday. On Sunday, for our Wichita Falls brethren, we will have a live stream of the worship at the building, starting at 9 with the Bible study and 10 for the worship. It'll be all one long live stream. After the Sunday morning worship, I'll stay there at the building, and I'll work on the video and get it uploaded, both for the Bible class and for the sermon. And so hopefully, Lord willing, I'll have that updated around or uploaded to Facebook and YouTube by about 1 o'clock. Again, I don't know how long it's going to take for those uploads to complete, but I'll do my best for that. But I will get it uploaded on Sunday so that everybody can keep along with the 1 Timothy. Now we're in 2 Timothy chapter 4 on that Bible study. But there will not be a live stream on Sunday at 1 o'clock. Okay, so we'll, after tomorrow's daily devotional, then the next live stream that we'll have, just, like we're doing now, will be Monday at 6:30 for our next daily devotional. All right, everybody, y'all have a great day, and Lord willing, I'll see you all tomorrow at 6:30. Thanks, everybody.